Well, hello. It's a Sunday edition of the Unfiltered podcast. EJ here. I'm sitting here in my bed watching Red Zone as my kids are, one kid's in the bath, one kid is trying to entertain himself. So I actually got like maybe a minute or so to check in here. I wanted to react quickly to the official college football playoff rankings, the official, because it is done, it is served, it is done, no more arguing. This is the list, and we move forward. We got the 4. And we got there with very little chaos, really, even with the chaos that happened on Friday and Saturday, even with obviously USC screwed themselves because they couldn't get the job done. TCU, despite losing to Kansas State in overtime. The committee got it right. Here it is, your playoff 4 officially. 1, Georgia, no surprise. 2, Michigan, no surprise. 3, TCU. And 4, Ohio State. I think the only real argument people could have about the rankings at this point is should Ohio State be in there should Alabama be in there opposed to Ohio State? And a couple of my compadres on the Yahala podcast have been arguing that since last week. And while I do understand their logic with it, and I do agree with the logic, the committee, as I told you guys before, and we said in the podcast too, the committee saved themselves from having to worry about that because by positioning certain opponents in a way leading into this week, it really saved themselves. As I said on the podcast, when the last rankings came out last Tuesday, and we saw that Penn State was positioned number 8 in the country, which, by the way, I don't think they're the 8th best team in the country. They should be ranked lower. But at the same time, they have 2 losses, and I don't want to call them 2 good losses, but because the committee did that, because the committee positioned certain teams, Ohio State also has 1 loss. They got it right here by virtue of by virtue of the way they set it up leading into the weekend. They got it right. Alabama has no business being in there by virtue of that because, number one, you can sit here and say, Alabama has 2 good losses by a total of 4 points, and we get all that, and that makes sense. What hurts Alabama at the end of the day is this. Where are their good wins? They have no good wins on their schedule. So again, when we have these discussions about the rankings, as much as I can't stand Ohio State, and God knows I do, I can't stand them. They're my bottom 5 worst teams and hated teams in college football. There's really no way, especially when you look at these rankings, to justify leapfrogging Alabama. I know there was some that were saying about, Clemson can probably leapfrog if they win the conference championship, and the committee, really values conference championships, and that could be the case too. But Clemson fucked themselves also too by losing to South Carolina, and I don't think Clemson deserved to be in the conversation because again, Clemson were their quality wins on top of that. I mean, I guess they beat Florida State, my team. That's about it. But at that point, it's like, okay, if you're doing that for Clemson, then Alabama should be lifted, and why not? But it's also why I'm happy, with the news that came out on Thursday about the official 2024. We're going to get the college football playoff, finally, 12-team playoff. Because at least, look, I as a guy who does content, I love the discussion points about this every year. This is fun. Like the debating about who should get in and all that, that's a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot of fun to sit there and talk about this. But in my heart of hearts, at the end of the day, all the arguments we have about this stuff, I'd rather it be proven on the field. And the only way you're going to do that is to have a system that benefits a larger sample of teams that you argue should be in the conversation. Also, and I'll say it again, I said in the podcast last week, on the Nurse Week podcast, the main show, what we're not appreciating here. Parity is here in college football now. Parity is here. We no longer have, dominant teams, but let's be real. Georgia, they're unbeaten, yes. Michigan unbeaten, yes. But those teams had challenges throughout the year. Georgia almost lost to Missouri in, week 7, week 6. Michigan had a couple of scares this year too. So we're starting to see, at least from a certain section of the college football world, there's some closure. There's some closeness happening here. I think to do this now, to have a playoff now, it does the sport wonders. It really does. So that right here. No takeaway also Tennessee's number 6. By the way, the committee absolutely dinged USC bad because USC's lost so bad to Utah that they weren't even in the top 6. They weren't even in consideration for being into the playoff 6. Or New Year's 6, rather. So, because Tennessee got leapfrogged them, and rightly so, Tennessee's a better team, but then Tennessee's knocking themselves also too because of the fact that had they not lost South Carolina, and granted, they lost Hooker, the quarterback for the season too. Also, combined with that, also they would be beaten the 4. They would have leapfrogged Ohio State. So, I'm just glad TCU got in despite losing yesterday. They deserved to get in. I'm also glad not only did the committee got it right there on that point, they also left them at number 3 because TCU still has a better loss and better wins than Ohio State. I don't give a shit what legacy Ohio State has. Who cares about your legacy? What does that do with this year? You lost to Michigan. You lost bad at home with great weather. So, Michigan noise. That being said, early predictions, because we have obviously Georgia facing Ohio State, which I hope they slaughter them, of course. Michigan, TCU on New Year's, of course, too. Obviously, I'm picking Georgia to beat Ohio State, and I'm picking Michigan to beat TCU. I will say that TCU game will be pretty compelling, though. It could be compelling. I think Michigan tends to play down sometimes to the opponents, at least for chunks of games. So TCU could be plucky in that game. That could be a fight into the fourth quarter. But I'm predicting Georgia to win the whole thing. I think Georgia, Michigan, and you guys all know Michigan. I'm a Florida State guy, number 1, but Michigan, my number 2 team. As much as I want to see Michigan win this whole thing, I don't see why something Georgia. Georgia's just damn good. They're just that damn good. And they've been on a tear ever since they got scared of Missouri. They've been on a tear ever since. So, again, the community got it right, at least by virtue of the context. They got it right. So, anyway, that's your official, as promised, too, emergency-ish, because it's been about 6 hours since the committee dropped the rankings. But, again, my kids didn't give me a chance to do this. So next one, again, this podcast, Unfiltered Podcast. Also, subscribe to the main show, Earthspeaker Podcast, on the main feed. We'll come back soon. Hopefully another episode of that soon. Maybe tonight, maybe Tuesday, we'll see. So, see you guys later.